Okay, David Shapiro, the Deputy Chairman at Sasfin Securities, joining me now to talk more about today's movements. David, good evening. The escalation of this Israel-Hamas conflict could affect oil production and transportation in the Middle East, and OPEC Plus, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia. They might reevaluate production cuts amid this whole thing. But tell me, what does this mean for prices, David, in the short term?
At the moment, to be honest, I thought that oil would have reacted more violently and gone up higher. But it's a knee-jerk reaction. In fact, last week or the week before, we were actually at higher oil prices. So I think the market has been kind of muted. I think it's been very sensible about the whole situation. I think if Iran is brought in and if sanctions are imposed or further sanctions against Iran, then you might find the oil price starting to rise again. But Dan, to be honest, I think markets have performed remarkably well. I'm just looking at the US. There's a slight fall in US prices. We held pretty steady, as you showed on the board there. The other thing is that gold price hardly moved. You know, normally in times of stress, you find that people run to the safety of gold. They did run to an extent to the dollar. But overall, I'm quite happy with the way that the market responded. I don't want to say it's brushed it aside, but it's nowhere near the kind of fear that we had.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. And we see the JSE starting off the week, David, in the green, in line with the global markets. One of the positive contributors, I understand, are the jobs numbers that came out of the US. Tell us about those and the other positives, but also the risks that this conflict may pose the longer it lasts.
Well, that depends whether it brings in outside countries, you know, whether you start to find interference. And I think that's why the US has shown its force in sending aircraft carrier to the Mediterranean, just to warn other nations not to get involved. And I think within time, hopefully this will settle down. Of course, it's going to drag on. But in the US, the job numbers that we saw on Friday just showed how strong the underlying economy there still is. But I think why markets responded positively to that number and not negatively because of fears that it might impose, you know, it might push the Fed to increase rates even further. But why we acted positively was that I think the inflation, in other words, the hourly wage number actually went down or was flat. So we are seeing wage inflation, deflation or inflation coming under control. So markets are taking it in stride. But overall things are pointing in the right direction.
That's good. That's good to hear this evening, David. Just quickly, some company updates now. Tonga managing to secure some short-term funding. What does this mean for this ailing sugar business?
It's still ailing. It's going to be a long struggle, but at least it's surviving, and it needs the help, Dan. You know, this is such an important company, not only from KZN's point of view, but from, you know, the whole country and employment. We can't afford to lose those workers and to lose a business like that. So whatever they can raise is of the utmost importance. You know, I'm not worried about the share price. I'm not worried whether it comes back onto the market. We're more interested that this company just continues to trade and, balance its books.
Okay, it's the end of an era this week, David. Steinhoff's delisting in sight as a date for its liquidation for the end of this week.
Well, it's trading at 2 cents, so it hasn't got far more to go, but it's been a long, drawn-out saga. Dan, to be honest, I think the only people who made in the long run from this were the corporate advisors, you know, just by keeping it alive for so long. I think they're the ones who benefit. I'm not the shareholders, obviously didn't, and of course a few employees. But sad to see this happen, you know, to a business like this. It really is sad.
Thank you very much, David Shapiro, the Deputy Chair at Sasfin Securities, just weighing in on some of today's movements on the market.